Hello there and welcome to Wildcard Decks, a channel where I like to take a look at some of the more off-meta options and some cards that perhaps don't see a whole lot of use. And today we are looking at Wedge, and as you can see from the title, you win fast or you just lose. So it's perhaps a bit comparable to Kylo Ren from set 2, where if you're not winning within 5 resources with him perhaps, you might be able to stretch it to 6 at times, you are probably just going to lose as you just run out of steam completely. So this deck is obviously, because of Wedge's ability, very focused on pilots, and we have mostly gone for rebel units because we do have rebel assault, so we want to be able to maximize the potential usage out of that. So let's get into the deck proper. And what does Wedge do himself? So when he's not deployed, as an action, you exhaust him and play a card from your hand using piloting. It costs 1 less. So pilot cards have they have 2 different costs. They've got the deploy cost, as in the unit cost if you were to play it on the ground, which we're generally not looking to do. And they also have a piloting cost, which will be under the artwork in the text, which is usually cheaper. Sometimes it's the same cost as the unit itself, but usually it is cheaper. So with Wedge, there are a few 1-cost pilots, which means you can actually play them for free with his ability. So we're playing some early game space units, shoving a pilot on them as quickly as possible, and just trying to run our opponent over by playing probably 2 cards a phase for the most part. And then when he deploys, he has a 5 deploy, which is good for an aggressive deck. A 3/6, not amazing stats, but if you have already piloted all of your ships up and you just need to get another 3 attack damage onto the board, then deploying Wedge as a ground unit is not a terrible option. If you do deploy him on a vehicle, however, then on attack he has the same effect as his non-deploy side. So yeah, and he gives +3, +4, which is a good boost at that stage of the game. Now, on to the earliest wildcard we will ever feature, because it's the freaking base. It's probably the worst base in the whole game. Actually, no, Droid Manufacturing might be worse, who knows. But Shadow Collective Camp, I wouldn't recommend using this base in pretty much any deck whatsoever. However, with Wedge, I think it does have a little bit of a place. For 20, it's definitely not worth 5 less HP. I think that's a bit ridiculous. But draw in a card with this deck, you burn through your hand so quickly because you're playing a unit, you're playing a pilot, you're playing a unit, and then you're playing another pilot. You might even play 2 units and a pilot. So you're running out of cards by the time you get to 5 resources. You might only have 1 card in hand by that point. So deploying Wedge or playing Wedge means that you get another card, and hey, it might be something you can play at phase and exhaust your whole hand again. So yeah, I think this is probably the only real spot I would consider using this base. Otherwise, Tarkin Town and even the Thermal Oscillator are just going to be much better options. So let's get into our vehicles in the deck. So most of the vehicles we have are in space. There are 2 ground units, I think, that are vehicles. So as you can see, all of these are rebels, and hopefully we'll get a better 2-drop that can replace the Alliance X-Wing in future, but we've got everything you would pretty much expect otherwise. The one thing that I would consider replacing is the Red Squadron Y-Wing, because it only has 1 attack power, and we don't really care about damaging the enemy's units, which is what they can do with the indirect damage. We would much rather all that damage goes onto base. So the one I was thinking about was Resistance X-Wing, but of course that is not a rebel. But it would have more power than the Y-Wing, particularly when it grabs a pilot onto it. But not much to say about all of these. They're all very good aggressive options. Blue Leader helps with ambush. If they've played a 2-powered space unit in the first phase, then you can come in and take that out pretty reliably, and then shove a pilot on it to give it a health boost so it can stick around. The Millennium Falcon is obviously the powerhouse of the deck because it can have 2 pilots on it at any time. And for each pilot it gets +1 attack. So if you put R2D2 on it, it's a +1/+1 normally, but because of Falcon's ability, it actually gets a +2/+1 boost. So Millennium Falcon can escalate quite quickly and is something that you would be potentially trying to build your plays around so that you can get this to be a big old beast. Bright Hope, if you're going against a deck that is trying to interact with you in space, then shoving a Bright Hope down to protect your piloted units could be quite useful. You're not likely to get much use out of the when played of returning a ground unit to your hand so that you can draw a card. If you have had to deploy a pilot on the ground, then this could be a good option to return them to hand so that you can then play them out onto a ship. Bright Hope's not a bad target for Wedge to deploy onto as well, because he'll turn it into a 5. It's 5/10, isn't it? Where is he? 3/4. Yes, 5/10, which is going to be pretty hard for them to take out whilst being a threat in and of itself. Red Leader. So this can be an awkward card to figure out, because on the face of it it's a 4 cost, but this unit costs 1 resource less to play for each friendly pilot unit and upgrade. So if any of your ships or vehicles have got a pilot on them, then this will be a 3 cost. If you've got a pilot on a ship and a pilot on the ground as a unit, it will cost 2. So sometimes you need to think about your sequencing, because you might, if you played this first, that might be the only cards you can play. But if you've got a 1 cost pilot that you can play for free with Wedge, that will mean this only costs 3. And then perhaps you play a pilot for its full cost on another ship for 2, then this costs 2. And then for 4 resources, you've managed to pump up 2 vehicles and play another. The other good thing about this one is that when a pilot upgrade attaches to this unit, creates an X-Wing token. So it creates a body in and of itself. This is another good target for Wedge, so that it becomes a 6/8, and you've created a 2/2 as well. I've only gone for 2 of those because it is a little bit awkward to play at times, especially if you're playing it for 4 cost for 3/4. That's terrible stats. On to the final space unit, and then the 2 ground units that we've got. So the Adelphi Patrol Wing, I would probably bump it up to 2. It's not Rebel, so we don't benefit from Rebel synergies there. However, it's a 4/6, so it's an awkward stat line to deal with because Velvet Dragon and Takedown immunity, and Direct Hit probably isn't seen a whole lot of use, I would wager, because it's too limited. But crucially, when played, you may attack with a unit. If you have the initiative, it gets +2/+0 for this attack. So even if you don't have the initiative, it helps make your actions more efficient. You're putting a unit down and being able to attack with whatever you want. It doesn't have to be a rebel, it doesn't have to be a ship, it can be anything. So it's got that flexibility about it as well. Dilapidated Ski Speeder. So this is a gimmick vehicle. The only reason you want it is to put big Starklighter on it, because it's a 3/7, but it's actually, when played, deal 3 damage to this unit, so in reality it's a 3/4. However, Biggs, his piloting ability amongst the 3 of them that he has, is if he's on a speeder, then that speeder gains grit. So all of a sudden, he gives a +2 boost as it is anyway, so that would make it a 5. +3 damage with grit makes it an 8 powered attacker, so they immediately are going to have to try and deal with it. So that's the reason that's in there, and Biggs is a 1 cost pilot, so you can play him for free. So it works very well with Wedge. And then Gorilla Attack Pod, I'd probably bump this up to 2 as well. We'll get on to what cards that I would be ditching or replacing. But it's a 6 cost, so it comes out after Wedge has been deployed. It's a 4/6, so not amazing stats on the face of it. However, it has grit. And also, when played, if a base has 15 or more damage on it, ready this unit. That is extremely likely to happen, and is one of the ways that you would be potentially looking to finish the game off. So, on to our pilots. So, we've got Nien Nun. I assume the B is silent, who knows. A 1/2 if deployed on the ground, which is obviously rubbish. However, he can be a glass cannon because this unit gets +1 attack for each other friendly pilot unit and upgrade. So if you've got 2 or 3, then he could be hitting for 4 as a 1-cost unit on the ground, which is, it's pretty tasty. He is a 1-cost pilot, so with Wedge, that means he can be played onto a vehicle for free, and he has the same effect for whatever vehicle he's added onto, and +1, +2 in terms of a boost to the vehicle itself. We come on to R2D2, and this is a card I would absolutely ditch because it just doesn't have a place in this deck. It doesn't work. It takes up a space in your hand for something that you could have a card that's just a lot better. The piloting cost for 0, on the face of it, sounds pretty good, but I say with Wedge, we can do that already with some of our pilots. So, yeah, why have 2 R2D2s and 2 Neon Nuns when you could ditch an R2 and have a Neon instead? I think I got blinded by, if I put him on the Falcon though, this is going to be amazing, but it just doesn't work. We already burn through our hand really quickly with this deck. Having a 0-cost card in your hand so that you can play 3 cards in one phase is not a good idea. It does not help. It just doesn't work. Sorry, R2. Goodbye. Luke Skywalker. I found him a bit awkward to use as well, probably because of his cost. He is a 3 piloting cost, so you're only going to be able to get him down for 2 at the cheapest. He has a very good effect because if he, for any reason, as an upgrade would be defeated, then you can plonk him on the ground. So you still have a unit presence if yours has been waylaid or removed or just killed by combat damage, etc. But I've found him a little bit awkward to deploy with Wedge. Big Starklighter is not someone that I've had difficulty deploying with Wedge because he's also a 1-cost pilot, and he has 3 different effects depending on what type of vehicle he has been shoved onto. So most of our vehicles in the deck are fighters, so the most common effect he's going to get is Gain Overwhelm. So that's probably the least exciting one. If they've got a Sentinel out, then great, you will get some residual damage on their base if he's taking it out. If the attached unit is a transport, then it gets +0, +1. So putting him on the Bright Hope will make it a bit sturdier to stick around. If you put him on the Falcon as well, that's the only other transport we've got in the deck. I've got hiccups. If attached unit is a speeder, it gains grit. So I say we've only got the 1 speeder, but it's the dilapidated ski speeder, and I say that unit is a gimmick with bigs. On to Poe Dameron. So generally, you're going to want to play him as a 4-cost unit because when you do, you get to create an X-Wing token, and then you can attach Poe to any vehicle that you have. Well, sometimes it doesn't have a pilot on it, of course. So you're creating a 2/2 in space, doesn't come in ready or anything, but if you have, for example, been able to get Red Leader out the turn beforehand because it can be discounted, then one of the best things you can do is follow that up with your 4 resources, playing Poe on the ground, getting a 2/2 in space, and then shoving Poe onto Red Leader, giving a +2/+3 boost, which makes it a 5/7, and then you get another X-Wing token from deploying a pilot onto Red Leader. So all of a sudden you've got 2 token X-Wings that are going to be ready when you've got Wedge coming out, which also gives you a target for Wedge to deploy onto. So yeah, quite a interesting bit of play that you can do there. Well, of course, if you've got the Falcon out and you might have deployed a 1-cost pilot onto it, deploy Poe immediately the next phase, create a token, and then shove Poe onto the Falcon with whatever other pilot you've already got on there, and then that Falcon is going to be a beast. Chewbacca, so the absolute best pilot in this deck by a freaking mile. He's not even a bad unit in and of himself as a 5/6 for 5, and he can't be defeated or returned to hand by enemy card abilities as a unit. So he's immune to Waylay, he's immune to Rival's Fall, he's already immune to Takedown anyway, but he's immune to Fel the Dragon, all that sort of thing. As a pilot, 3 cost, so you can deploy him on phase 2 for the full 3. you could, as you know, you can, what am I talking about? Yes, you could potentially, as you know, ignore me, I'm talking nonsense. Anyway, when he's on a vehicle unit, the attached unit gains, this unit can't be defeated or returned to hand by enemy card abilities. So the same as when he is a unit, so immune to Fail Dragon, Waylay, Takedown, all that good stuff. However, one thing to note is that as an upgrade, he can be defeated. So he is not immune to Confiscate, Bamboozle, Disabling Fangfighter, all that sort of thing. When he is an upgrade, he can still be interacted with in that way, which will then make the unit much more vulnerable. He also gives the highest amount of stats out of all the pilots we've got in the deck as a 3/3. So you play your 2-cost vehicle, your next turn you play Chewbacca on it, they are then going to have to deal with it with damage or exhausting it to delay the damage that they're going to receive. Onto the ground unit that is not a vehicle or a pilot, and I've gone for 2 of Leia, and I got blinded, I think, by the fact that she gives pilot units or units with a pilot on it a boost when attacking and restore 1. Fleet Lieutenant is just going to be a much better option, and I would replace her for that so that you can get an extra 2 damage in, because most of our units are rebels anyway, so yeah. Onto our events, because we don't have any upgrades whatsoever, ignoring the pilots, of course. So 3 of Rebel Assault, by far the best event in the deck, because it's action efficient and it gives the rebels a boost for the attacks that they make of +1. And it's only a 1-cost event, which I still find a bit mad. Prepare for Takeoff. So because we burn through cards in the deck, it kind of felt like it made sense to me to have this in, but you don't ever want to use it, so it's kind of pointless. So yeah, I would ditch this. It felt good in theory, but sometimes you live and learn, and yeah, I very rarely end up using this, and probably if I have used it, I'm just going to lose. So I would definitely be replacing this for maybe, another Guerrilla Attack Pod or a Delphi Patrol Wing, etc. Stay on target, so another attack pump or boost that we've got in the deck. So attack with vehicle unit, which is the main things we're going to be deploying. For this attack, it has +2 and gains when this unit deals damage to a base, you draw a card. So this helps us to replenish our hand, which will be running low throughout. And one interesting interaction that can happen is if we take a look at the Y-Wing. On attack, deal 3 indirect damage. So let's say you are targeting the base with stay on target, so you are getting a guaranteed 3 damage into it. If your opponent puts any of the indirect damage onto base as well, then that is 2 separate instances of damage going to base whilst stay on target is in effect. Therefore, you will actually draw 2 cards, not just for 1. Unlikely to be much of a factor or particularly happen very often. However, it is something just to make a note of. So, on to other options. Now, we have no real way of interacting with the ground, so if you're against another aggro deck and you are needing to delay them a little bit or slow them down, then Bunker Defender is going to be an excellent option because it's only a 1-cost. Yes, it's 2/1, which is abysmal stats, so it can just be pinged away. But while you control a vehicle unit, this unit gains Sentinel. So let's think of a potential typical play. So you play your 2-cost space unit. You then follow it up with Bunker Defender when you've got 3 resources. You then use Wedge's discount to put Chewbacca on your space unit. There you go. That's not a bad 2-phase play that you've made. They hate that ship, so I originally did have this in, but I didn't feel like I had any real targets for it. I think if you maxed out on Guerrilla Attack Pod, then that would be very useful because you'd be able to get that down on 4 resources. You might be just a bit short of 15 damage on their base, possibly, but if you're not, then great, your Guerrilla Attack Pod is going to be ready. and we don't care too much about them having 2 TIE fighters. The other target, I guess, would be Blue Leader. So let's just go back very quickly, because if you have 3 resources, you use They Hate That Ship, play Blue Leader out for free, actually. You have 2 resources remaining. You can then use its when played to move it to the ground arena and give it 2 experience tokens. So for 3 resources, you've managed to play a 5/5 unit, which you can then potentially shove a 1-cost pilot onto. So I think if you are going to go for They Hate That Ship, we definitely want probably a full 3 of guerrilla attack pods, and then your other main target would be Blue Leader. Black one, because I've gone Rebel synergies, I would not particularly recommend this. You would probably want to max out on your Poe Damerons in the deck. If you were to go with this, shoot down gives us a bit more interaction in space, and also if you kill the space unit, then you can deal 2 damage to a base, so it gives us that bit more of an aggressive stance on it. Fleet Lieutenant I've already covered. This would replace Leia, gives a +2 boost for your rebel unit that attacks. Open fire if you need to interact a bit more. Sabine's Masterpiece, so because this is a red and green deck, would be able to give an experience token and deal 1 damage to a unit or base. So again, the on attack would give us some more aggressive potential. It would potentially boost itself up, and then we'd always do the red damage effect to the base in most instances. And then General Dodonna, 4 resources, I think is a little bit of an awkward spot in this deck. Just having a look, yeah, we don't have much. So giving a +1/+1 boost to your rebel units, which is a majority of deck, could be potentially quite useful. And then Senatorial Corvette, if you do not perhaps want to go the rebel route, then this could be an option, because it has Saboteur, so a 5-powered Saboteur unit at that stage in the game. You're hopefully in the spot where you're close to finishing them off. They're going to have to deal with this, and if they do deal with it, they're going to have to discard a card if they kill it. And then Black one, this is again probably more of a theory piece. If you are wanting or needing more cards, then this can come down and give you 3 cards, because you do not have to have a hand to discard it. So even if this is your last card in your hand, you play it, you just draw 3. Stats are abysmal, but that's not what it's for. So yeah, more of a theory piece. I suspect it probably doesn't work in this deck anyway, and to be honest, I don't think we've seen it in any other deck either, have we, thus far? So yeah, that is the deck. As I say, there are a decent number of changes I would make to this, and if you don't win by 5 or 6 resources, you're probably not going to. I guess the other thing that would be useful in this deck potentially would be 4 calls I believe in. I only have 1 of them, so I've just not bothered with it at all, but that would give you potentially that extra reach if you're at 5 or 6 resources and you're just starting to run out of steam, or perhaps they've got sentinels out, etc. Then that will help to get you. I mean, it's a pretty good hit rate in here already of heroism units and cards, I should say. So you'll be pretty likely to get 3 or 4 damage in, which might be enough. Daring Raid might be another option. Anyway, I am kind of rambling a bit now. I have had mixed success with this deck, as I say. I think there are some quick improvements to make for it. And as I say, it's all in the title. Win fast or you lose. So let me know what you think. The next video is probably going to be a Twin Suns deck video. And it was Admiral Akbar with Chancellor Palpatine. A very famous pairing. You know, I loved them in all their scenes together. But yeah, have a good one, and I'll see you next time.